Hi, welcome to Critical Hit. I'm Matthew.
I'm David.
I'm Kyle.
Today we're back at MONTH-A-ZAKI, and we're going to talk about our the first Miyazaki film ever made. It's a Lupin III movie, actually. Miyazaki himself wrote the script for this one and directed it. It was made in, I think, 1979?
79 was the release.
So it goes back a ways, but it's the first movie he ever worked on. Just so you know, Lupin III is a anime series that came out back then. Miyazaki helped animate and even wrote some episodes for the show, but overall he was brought on board to make this movie. So it's a really special kind of thing because it's not only his first movie, but he's also playing with something that's been around for a while. So anyways, the movie itself is about a master thief called Lupin, and he goes around stealing money from people and stuff, so on and so forth, and goes on ridiculous adventures with all of his friends. And in this one, he and his buddy are encountering a ring of counterfeit money called the Goat Bills, and they're the greatest counterfeits ever made. They look just like the real stuff. So they go to this fantastic, mythical European country, and there they meet this count, and he's planning on taking over the kingdom, and he's the one running the money, and he's kept a beautiful princess locked away in a tower, and he's going to marry her, and through that marriage find the ancient treasure of her family. So it's up to Lupin and his friends, and the Japanese police force for some reason, to stop all this from happening. Overall, I really love the movie. It's really fun. But I've seen it a couple times now, so I want to hear what you guys had to say, because both of you guys haven't seen the movie before, right?
No.
Yeah.
No, this is... I started it one time, but something called me away, and I wasn't able to really get that far into it.
So as first timers, what do you think, David?
Well, I mean, this is the first time I've seen anything Lupin the Third related.
Yeah.
And as for me, I definitely enjoyed it for the most part, but at the same time, I felt like there was a kind of a hollowness is probably too strong of a word, but I found myself in a situation where I kind of liked the characters, but I didn't really care about them much.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. So there was sort of a sense where I just enjoyed the movie, but it didn't really have much of a lasting effect on me.
It was probably more made for fans of the characters already.
And that's true. Yeah, I mean,
the movie doesn't really introduce characters.
Yeah,
it kind of assumes you know them.
It uses a lot of characters, from the series, and we're clearly meant to have a sort of a background to them that I just didn't possess. So I mean, at times it felt like the movie just sort of had too many characters, but that's because I just didn't,
know the show.
Sure.
Know the
Yeah,
show.
that's right.
Yeah, I kind of liked it because they had to give very little explanation of who the characters were in that way, personally speaking, and it just kind of was able to get itself running from the start. But the way you were describing it, it sounded almost like a fairy tale.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
With a man who lost
stories. Yeah,
and even Lupin kind of relates it to that at one point, where he's describing the situation to the princess.
Yeah.
But there's it's a really interesting setting where it's able to take on these mythic fairy tale kinds of themes, but it takes these Japanese elements and mixes them in with a sort of a European and almost Swiss, German, Austrian kind of feel and location.
Oh yeah.
And it it establishes this really cool environment to play in, and shows us once again that Miyazaki has an understanding of Western culture and Western animation.
It feels so Western. It's surprising when you find out that Miyazaki wrote the movie, because it feels really Western. The plot, even the characters, and the setting,
and even a lot of the humor and stuff. It almost felt more like Looney Tunes light rather than anime per se.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I would say that there was a really good job with the translators and how they managed to get some of the swearing down in particular, and just make it feel so natural.
And the dub was pretty good too.
Yeah, the dub was fantastic.
Dubs, obviously, especially from back then, they tend to really fluctuate in terms of quality.
Yeah.
For animes, but yeah, this one was pretty good.
This one was very good. I actually really enjoyed it. I liked the characters. I loved the lightheartedness, and yet it was able to occasionally just add some gravitas to a scene. And it was fun constantly. It was high flying, and then it was it took itself seriously when it should, and then was completely playful and even irreverent at times, which I enjoyed.
It really it's a really fun movie to watch, especially if you've seen anything else Miyazaki does, because it's his earliest work, but you already see so much of what he wants to talk about in stories. You see so much of his elements in character work.
Yeah.
And actually, what I found so impressive, that even though what's very unique about this movie is that this is Miyazaki, working on a property that was already established.
It wasn't him creating a story.
And yet, even though he couldn't start from a clean slate, it still felt very distinctly Miyazaki in terms of style.
Yeah,
he was really. I think you know, the ability to bring out, you know, your own sort of tropes and in someone else's universe and make it work. I think that's a really strong sign of a really good artist.
With at the same time not changing that thing so much that it no longer resembles its former self. Someone who did this really well would be like Joss Whedon with Avengers.
Yeah,
is a decent comparison.
Yeah, exactly.
And but it really was very strong in that way.
Well, and he does. I mean, you see so much of the classic stuff. Like we all know, like Miyazaki's love for nature. This movie is set in the European mountains.
Yeah.
And it just
you got the Swiss Alps kind of going on in the background
exactly.
there.
And it's kind of fun because you have that. He's taking these characters who kind of are classic crime criminals, and so they're usually in the city, and he just takes them right out of the city and puts them on these beautiful scenes, these ruins of a lost civilization, and the beautiful river lake around the castle.
Well, the beginning of the movie is their departure from the city, urban area,
traveling all the way into the mountains,
and then at the very end of it, it's their return
to the city.
And you know, towards the beginning, there really is just kind of a pretty nice stretch of just like them sort of exploring this kind of abandoned castle that's been taken over by greenery and vines and stuff like that. And and you can already see that love for nature.
Yeah, and you already see so many things he talks about.
That dialogue that he has about nature and society and nature and technology that is so essential to me.
The only bad thing in that land are the people, not the place itself is beautiful.
Which is very Miyazaki. That's a very Miyazaki.
Incredibly Miyazaki.
Yeah.
I would straight up Mononoke right there.
One thing that you notice though is in this one, there's not that Miyazaki tends to have machines. They're beautiful. He loves them. But there's oftentimes they pollute, and there's that blackness with the smoke and such that you see.
Yeah.
You didn't get that with the cars. There was just such a joy here about how the cars looked and making these fun chase scenes. Which they were cartoonish, but at the same time there was a real you still felt as though they had a real world equivalent as an automotive.
Is lively.
Vehicle.
Like it's just exciting. Like the car chase you're talking about. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's also like a very famous scene.
It is very famous.
People use it a lot. A lot of other directors for even live action stuff refer to that one for their car chases, and it's very short, but it's very exciting. The movie loves to just throw you in. Like I think even as we were watching it, Kyle, one of the things you said was like the plot didn't really explain itself until like halfway through the movie. Just like it's just once you just accept the world it's in, and like just having that car chase be the intro, where you just see the bride just driving for her life.
I think that's another staple of Miyazaki that we don't talk about so much is some of his movies are incredibly plot-driven. I'll admit that. But even within those movies, there's a sense of exploring the scenery and just trying to get a feel for the characters and the environment. And you see that in a lot of his works, but the one that comes to mind right now is Totoro, which you're just not quite sure where the plot's going for a very long time.
Well, it's all about the characters.
And you don't mind.
Yeah.
You don't mind at all. And I personally didn't care so much that I didn't have the plot yet, because the characters in this were so interesting, and the scenery was gorgeous, and there was just a playful tone going on.
Like, the world's so well established early on.
Well, and the characters are very arch, so it's almost like, to a certain extent, you almost don't even need, I mean, you can kind of see the plot just by, you know, within
just
the first
seeing the characters.
Exactly.
Seeing the characters.
I mean, because, you know, you have the villain who's
the Count.
The Count, who's basically just like a Bond villain, and then
you
have Lupin III, who's a less suave, more...
He's the charming rogue, you know.
He was basically like a more charming, well, not more charming, but a modified Bond, pretty much. And it's kind of a spy flick.
Yeah, it really is. And it's a fun concept, and I'm really happy that Miyazaki took a character who's known for stealing, and he makes it I need to steal this girl, and it's really an exciting story with both of their characters. Personally, I really love their chemistry between him and the princess is really powerful. Like
something with that though, just to return to the idea of Miyazaki's what he's building towards in the rest of his career. You see here, and part of this comes from he didn't quite use Lupin as I have seen him in the past. I remember when Lupin III was on Adult Swim for a while there, and he's a little bit more of a lewd character, a little bit more of a lech in that version. This piece was more of everything that was good about Lupin being put up on screen.
All the characters were just displaying what the best they got.
It's very much the best of that character. And with that, you see he's still kind of the rogue, and there's badness about him, and he's a little bit sooty and dirty and all of that. Whereas there's this other character who is the princess who's innocent and precious, and you get that theme that's very important to Miyazaki's work and to Miyazaki as a person, which is the protection of the innocent and the nurturing of the innocent.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Even at the end, well, let's talk about them first. So, like, we have the princess, and Lupin, and they're really fun characters to me, at least, because they seem like they're polar opposites. He's always talking, always charismatic, and when he walks into a room, like, he makes everything about him. Everyone kind of turns their head when Lupin walks in the room, where she's very reserved and very quiet. And innocent is a great word. She's always dressed in white. Like, almost every scene we see her in is a bride gown.
Which especially contrasts with either the bright red of Lupin or the black of the villain. The Count.
Or his classic green, his green coat. And it's really interesting because they work as characters really well together, where they play off each other, they laugh together. But near the end, you have this interesting scene where she is rescued, and she wants to go with him to go on his adventures. And she says, I know I wouldn't be a good thief, but I could learn. Yeah. And Lupin has this moment, and you can kind of see where he's like weighing his options.
He doesn't want to corrupt her.
That's the thing.
But at the same time, he kind of wants her to be there, and you can see that he's struggling behind her back, whether he's going to hug her or not.
But that was the thing I thought was so cool, was that it was a moment where he realized that she's way too good for him. Not in the sense of like, I don't stand a chance with her, but in the sense of like, as a person, she's too good, and he's too much corrupted, and he's okay. Like, he kind of has like this making peace with that. So like, she leans in for a kiss, and he just like gently kisses her forehead, and it kind of keeps her preserved in that innocence.
He's kind of offering her the life that she never really got to have.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just a really cool. Their dynamic. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I enjoyed the movie for a lot of reasons, but one thing was just how reminiscent it was for me of other things I've seen. And not just in anime. I mean, I can see how Lupin's kind of a type that produces other anime characters. Yeah. He's almost like a prefiguration of Goku, of Spike Spiegel from Cowboy Bebop.
Stuff, yeah.
Just the sort of charm, the wackiness, the eating all of the food. Yeah. These are just sort of anime types at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
And, but at the same time, Dave was pointing out how there's almost a Bond feel to this movie.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean,
it's very present.
It's very much there. Like you have the gadgets. I mean, even though it's in a different way, you still have the main spy, romancing the main female character.
Well, yeah, and then even to get more particular, it felt very Goldfinger with the car chase going down that road, and then you're up in these kind of Swiss Alps kind of area. It felt very similar to what you saw in those movies. It had a little bit of an Italian Job kind of feel going on there.
Yeah, I could see that. For me, like, it also more reminded me of other of those kind of like free-spirited high adventure movies. Like, I think of The Princess Bride. These two, like, those movies to me just go hand in hand very well together. Where I
might not have paired those.
Well, you have the suave, the character, the dread Pirate Roberts, right? And he's going to rescue the woman from her wedding with Humperdinck, and like it's similar in those sense of those plot elements. And both movies have that I don't know, that spirit of liveliness that I just love. Another one that reminds me of is an old school movie called The Great Race, where there's a very similar scene where they have to break into a castle and rescue a guy. And I just love those kind of the adventure elements of that is really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it was a little too just. I don't know. It was fun, but it was to me it was just fun.
Yeah,
like honestly, like it's the kind of thing where I saw it. I thought it was a bit. It's not actually technically very long, but it felt a little long for me.
Yeah,
I think probably because I just didn't connect as much to the characters as I was supposed to, in the sense that I didn't know the show.
The characters.
Actually, I think I'd say out of the Miyazaki films I've seen, this one doesn't get like the most punches home. Like if I watch like Nausicaa or Spirited Away, I walk away with like I don't know, the lessons instilled in you, and this one doesn't. It's very.
It's more playful.
Yeah, in a like non-negative way. It's kind of shallow.
Yeah, like, It's kind of it's not very deep. It's fun, but I mean, I kind of
it's visually enjoyable.
I'm probably not going to think about it tomorrow.
That's interesting.
Or the day after. But
it didn't need to be anything else. I would say, like, the story, for me, it was so much fun, and it was so refreshing to get fun like that when I just watched other really hard movies or other Miyazaki films where it's really heavy. Like, for me, it's nice to go back to it reminds me of Ponyo in that way, where like it's just very it has this one level to it,
Yeah.
And it's very content just to be there.
Yeah, and I think Ponyo is actually a pretty excellent example of a movie that it's well, not very deep. I connected to it a lot more than this. Though.
Okay, that's fair.
Huh.
But
I think that's
we'll get
just-
to that eventually, I'm sure.
I think there's just sort of the pros and cons of using an established character is, for one thing, that you're going to have people who come into the movie who know these guys
Yeah,
and are going
of
to have
course,
that,
yeah.
and it's going to be so much more fun for them.
Yeah.
And then even if you don't know the characters, I think that they're kind of typey enough that they're enjoyable for you already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They make themselves pretty clear as to who they are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But in a way, I mean, you could get a little overwhelmed with how many.
Yeah.
You could get annoyed at several things, but there's just sort of there are pros and cons to this method, and for me, I think again, it's probably not the deepest thing, but it does show us some of the depth that Miyazaki has as a storyteller.
Yeah.
And it gave us a really good projection of where he's going, and it was a very enjoyable, fun kind of moment.
Yeah.
It was something between James Bond and Looney Tunes. And
It's not what I expect when I would sit down to watch a Miyazaki film.
not at all.
But I will say, like for me, it was just I think it's a really good starting point for him to be able to take a classic series that he's been working on, like he's been guest working on for a while, and give it a beautiful movie. It's a really cool way to start off telling his own stories from then on.
Yeah.
And for me, like just to be able to start seeing the little glimpses of how much he cares about nature, of how much he cares about innocence, in that movie is really cool. Just to watch him progress, because like he made that in his 40s, and now he's in his 70s. Like you can just see how far he's gone on since then, with his ideas and with his beliefs, and it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that when you look at someone's like midlife in that way, you can really see a little bit more of where they're coming from.
Yeah.
And in particular, for instance, with this one, the issues of nature and innocence, we see that in Nausicaa, we see that in Mononoke, and we see that in Totoro, whether it's in a positive, whether the innocence is maintained, or whether it suffers because of its encounter with something else. And it's nice to see that mattered to him this far back. And it's going to be, and if you have the time, I would encourage you to watch more of these movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to kind of see how that develops and some of the different dynamics you get, even all the way up to The Wind Rises.
Yeah.
And watching what he ends up doing with that.
You know, thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, it was good. I mean, I as for a personal recommendation, I mean, just seeing it sort of in and of itself, I'm not sure. I mean, it's sort of thing. I think if you want to see where Miyazaki came from, I think it's interesting. If you're a fan of Lupin III, you've probably already seen it anyways, but you should see it. I mean, but if you're just sort of watching it in and of itself, I'm not totally sure how much I'd recommend it.
That's fun.
That's
I think I'm on a similar page. If you like anime in general, it's probably just a good one to watch and just a good one to know.
Well, I think it's a good, like, I would qualify it as like one of my party movies where if I got a group of friends with popcorn that want to watch something fun, it'd be a fun movie.
I would watch this with a group of friends if I'm trying to have a good time, rather than say The Wind Rises.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
But isn't that crazy how far he's gone from one to the other?
Yeah.
But yeah, personally, I would say
everywhere in between.
Personally, I would just say, like, for me, it's really good. It's really fun and lighthearted, and if you love that kind of stuff, you should absolutely watch it. And you don't need to worry about, do I need to know the character before seeing it? I would say, at least for me. I know you and I differ, but I would say you can just jump on in and have a fun time. But yeah, I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Alright guys, welcome back to MONTH-A-ZAKI. Join us next time to talk about Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind. Talk to you guys later.